Human officers would be available to serve as instructors at your military schools. Our strategic planners could work with your general staffs. Our historians could help you analyze your own military traditions and identify areas for improvement. Overlord. Dexcar leaned back in his chair. You're offering to teach us how to fight wars. We're offering to teach you how to think about warfare the way humans do, Marcus corrected, as a science that can be studied, understood, and improved. The negotiations that followed were unlike anything the aliens had expected. Instead of humanity begging for acceptance into the galactic community, the various species were competing for access to human military knowledge. The Gornak Collective offered to share their cybernetic enhancement technologies in exchange for human tactical doctrines. The Nexari proposed joint research projects combining their advanced materials science with human weapons development. Even the proud Zephyrians quietly inquired about sending observers to human military exercises. By the end of the day, the framework for a comprehensive agreement had been established. Humanity would join the Confederation as a full member with no restrictions on expansion or military development. In return, humans would share their military expertise and serve as instructors and advisors to other species. There is one final point, Marcus said as the formal negotiations concluded. This treaty includes a mutual defense clause. An attack on any Confederation member will be considered an attack on all members. Several delegates nodded their agreement, but Marcus wasn't finished. I want to make sure everyone understands what this means. If any species attacks a Confederation member, they will be fighting not just that species, but humanity as well. The implication was clear. Any enemy of the Confederation would now face the most militarily advanced species in the galaxy. As the summit concluded, Marcus found himself surrounded by alien military officers asking detailed questions about human tactics, requesting copies of historical analyses, and proposing joint training exercises. Captain Williams approached him during a break in the discussions. Doctor, I think this went better than anyone expected. Did it? Marcus asked, watching a group of Zephyrian generals debate the merits of human combined arms doctrine. We came here to negotiate peace, and we ended up giving them education in warfare. Williams observed. Marcus smiled. Captain, sometimes the best way to ensure peace is to make sure everyone understands the cost of war. 3 days later, aboard the Endeavor on the journey back to Earth, Marcus completed his final report on the summit. The Kepler Accords, as they came to be known, established humanity as the newest member of the Galactic Confederation with full rights and privileges. But more importantly, the summit had established humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy. They were no longer seen as a young, impulsive species that needed guidance. They were recognized as the most sophisticated military force in known space, and every species wanted them as allies rather than enemies. In his personal log, Marcus made a final entry. The Confederation invited humanity to learn about peace. Instead, they learned about war. I suspect they got the better education. 6 months later, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Human military advisors were revolutionizing the armed forces of a dozen different species. Human tactical doctrines were being studied at military academies throughout Confederation space. Human strategic thinking was influencing everything, from trade negotiations to territorial disputes. The galaxy had invited humanity to the table as junior partners. Instead, humans had become the teachers, and everyone else had become students in the art of war. And in the end, that education proved to be the foundation for the longest period of galactic peace in recorded history. Because when everyone understands the true cost of conflict, peace becomes not just preferable, but essential. He paused and looked around at the assembled delegates. Not because we want to fight you, but because that's what humans do. We prepare for every possibility, learn from every source of information, and never stop adapting to new challenges. Captain Williams, who had been standing quietly behind Marcus throughout the session, stepped forward. "Doctor, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command." Marcus read the message on the datapad Williams handed him. His expression didn't change, but several of the alien delegates noticed his slight smile. "What is it, Dr. Kane?" "Overlord," Dex Carr asked. "Just confirmation of something I expected," Marcus replied. "While we've been talking here, human survey teams had discovered 17 new habitable worlds in unclaimed systems. Our expansion continues." The aliens realized that even while they had been meeting to discuss limiting human growth, humanity had continued to spread across the galaxy. The Peace Summit hadn't slowed them down at all. The final day of the summit arrived with an atmosphere that none of the participants had expected. What was supposed to have been a formal session where the Galactic Confederation dictated terms to humanity had transformed into something entirely different. Marcus entered the assembly hall to find the alien delegates in heated discussion among themselves. The neat, formal seating arrangement of the first day had been abandoned. Instead, representatives from different species were clustered together, sharing data tablets and speaking in urgent whispers. Overlord Dex Carr called for order, but his tone had changed completely from the condescending authority of the first day. Now he spoke to Marcus with the careful respect one military professional gives to another. "Dr. Kane, before we begin today's session, I must ask you a direct question." The Overlord's crystalline armor caught the light as he leaned forward. "The materials you have shared with us over the past 3 days represent the most comprehensive military analysis we have ever encountered. Are you prepared to discuss actual terms for humanity's integration into the galactic community?" "Of course, Overlord," Marcus replied. "But first, let me show you one more thing." He activated his holographic display for the final time. Instead of historical battles, the projection showed a series of charts and graphs analyzing future military developments. "This is a projection of human military capabilities over the next 50 years, Marcus began, "based on our current rate of technological advancement and territorial expansion." A first chart showed population growth across human colonies. The numbers were staggering, from the current 2 billion humans living outside Earth to a projected 50 billion within half a century. "These are conservative estimates," Marcus noted. "We tend to exceed our own projections." The next chart showed projected technological developments, new weapon systems, improved spacecraft, and theoretical advances in fields that most alien species were only beginning to understand. Quantum entanglement communication, programmable, matter weapons, stellar engineering projects, Marcus read from the list. Some of these technologies don't exist yet, but human research teams are actively developing them. Several alien delegates were furiously taking notes. The Gornick general, who had spoken the day before, looked particularly troubled. "Dr. Kane," the general interrupted, "surely these projections assume peaceful development. Military pressures could accelerate these timelines significantly." "You're absolutely correct, General," Marcus agreed. "These figures assume no major conflicts. If humanity faced a serious external threat, we would likely achieve these advances much faster." He showed them historical examples, how World War II had accelerated human technology by decades, how the Cold War had driven the development of space travel, how the colonial wars had led to breakthroughs in faster-than-light technology. "War makes us innovative," Marcus explained. "The more pressure we face, the faster we evolve." The final projection showed human military doctrine evolving over the next century. Traditional concepts of warfare were replaced by new strategies that incorporated technologies and tactics the aliens had never imagined. Temporal warfare using time dilation effects, Marcus read from the list. Psychological operations targeting entire species. Economic weapons that could collapse civilizations without firing a shot. The assembly hall was completely silent. The alien delegates were beginning to understand that they weren't just dealing with a young species that had grown too quickly. They were dealing with the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. Delegate Vexlia of the Valen Republic was the first to speak. Dr. Kane, what does humanity want from this summit? Marcus deactivated the display and looked around the room. That's an excellent question, Delegate. What we want is very simple, to be treated as equals. Equals? Overlord Vexkar's voice carried surprise. But you are a single species. The Confederation represents 12 different civilizations with thousands of years of spacefaring experience. And yet, Marcus said quietly, after 3 days of presentations, which one of your civilizations would be willing to fight a war against humanity? The silence that followed was answer enough. Marcus continued. You invited us here because you were concerned about our expansion. You wanted to establish limits on our growth and bring us under your control. But now you understand what that would actually mean. He gestured to Captain Williams, who activated a datapad showing intelligence reports from across human space. While we've been talking here, human survey teams have found 37 new star systems suitable for colonization. Our merchant fleets have established trade routes with 6 independent species that aren't part of the Confederation. Our military has conducted training exercises in 14 different sectors. Marcus paused to let the information sink in. Humanity's expansion hasn't slowed down because of this summit. If anything, it's accelerated. Every day we delay, humans spread further across the galaxy. The alien delegates began talking among themselves again, but this time their discussions had a different tone. Instead of planning how to contain humanity, they were trying to figure out how to work with them. Lieutenant Roberts stepped forward and handed Marcus a data crystal. Doctor, we've received the final authorization from Earth Command. Marcus inserted the crystal into his display system. The government of Earth has authorized me to make the following offer to the Galactic Confederation. The holographic display showed a formal treaty document with terms that surprised everyone in the room. Humanity requests full membership in Nownaship in the Confederation with voting rights equal to any other member species. In exchange, we offer mutual defense agreements, technology-sharing partnerships, and access to our military training programs. Several delegates began speaking at once, but Marcus held up his hand for silence. We're also prepared to offer something else, he continued. Educational exchange programs. The display showed images of human military academies, war colleges, and research institutions. On the 3rd day of the summit, Marcus arrived at the assembly hall to find the atmosphere completely changed. The alien delegates were no longer sitting in their formal positions, looking down at the human representative. Instead, they had arranged their seats in a circle around the central platform, like students gathering around a teacher. Overlord Vexkar opened the session with an unusual request. Dr. Kane, several of our military advisors have been studying the materials you shared yesterday. They have specific questions about human tactical adaptations. I'm happy to answer any questions, Marcus replied. A Gornek general with extensive cybernetic implants spoke first. Dr. Kane, our analysis suggests that humans excel at turning disadvantages into advantages. Can you provide specific examples of this phenomenon? Marcus activated his holographic display and smiled. That's an excellent question, General. Let me show you one of my favorite examples. The display filled with an image of vast ocean, with small aircraft flying over groups of ships arranged in neat formations. This is the Battle of Midway, fought during Earth's Second World War. The human forces were heavily outnumbered and had inferior equipment. Their main base had been badly damaged, and they were operating with limited fuel and ammunition. The scene began to move, showing aircraft taking off from a damaged airfield and flying toward a much larger enemy fleet. The enemy had 4 large aircraft carriers, over 200 aircraft, and a battle fleet that outgunned the human forces by more than 3 to 1. Any reasonable military analysis would have predicted an easy victory for the superior force. Aquatic Dalari delegate leaned forward with interest. Her species dominated ocean warfare in their home sector, and she understood naval tactics better than most. But the humans had 2 advantages, Marcus continued. First, they had broken the enemy's communication codes and knew exactly when and where the attack would come. Second, they were defending their home territory and were willing to take risks that the enemy couldn't match. The display showed the battle unfolding in real time. Small groups of human aircraft attacked the massive enemy fleet in waves, taking heavy casualties but disrupting the enemy formation. Then, at the crucial moment, a group of dive bombers broke through the defenses and destroyed 3 aircraft carriers in 5 minutes. In a single day, the humans destroyed most of the enemy fleet while losing only one of their own ships, Marcus concluded. Superior numbers and better equipment meant nothing because the humans understood their enemy better and were willing to sacrifice everything for victory. The Dalari delegate was taking detailed notes. The coordination required for such an attack must have been extraordinary, she observed. It was, Marcus agreed, but that's another human strength. We excel at coordination and teamwork, especially under pressure. He advanced the display to show a more recent example, the defense of the Kepler colony during the colonial wars. A small human outpost had been attacked by a fleet of alien pirates using stolen Confederation technology. The colonists had no military ships and only basic defensive weapons, Marcus explained. The attacking fleet had plasma cannons, energy shields, and faster-than-light capability. The display showed the human settlement, a cluster of buildings on a barren moon orbiting a gas giant. The attacking fleet approached confidently, expecting an easy victory against helpless civilians. But the humans had spent months studying the local environment, Marcus continued. They knew that the gas giant's magnetic field created unusual energy patterns, and they had learned to predict solar flare activity from the nearby star. The battle began with the pirate ships entering orbit and preparing to bombard the settlement. But as they moved into position, a massive solar flare erupted from the star, channeled by the gas giant's magnetic field directly into the attacking fleet. The pirates' own shields trapped the electromagnetic pulse inside their ships, frying their electronics and leaving them helpless, Marcus explained. The colonists then used mining equipment to board the disabled vessels and capture the crews. Several alien delegates were shaking their heads in amazement. The idea of using natural phenomena as weapons was not unknown, but the precision and timing required was extraordinary. Environmental warfare is a standard part of human military doctrine, Marcus said. We don't just fight on battlefields. We make the battlefield itself fight for us. Overlord Dexkar spoke up. Dr. Kane, these examples show tactical cleverness, but surely they represent exceptional cases rather than typical human capabilities. Actually, Overlord, they represent something much more important, Marcus replied. They show how humans approach the fundamental problem of warfare, how to win when you're not supposed to. He changed the display to show a graph with 2 lines representing technological development over time. One line showed steady, gradual progress. The other showed periods of slow advancement followed by sudden, dramatic leaps. Most species develop military technology at a steady pace, Marcus explained. Humans are different. We make our greatest advances during times of crisis, when survival depends on innovation. The display showed specific examples, the development of radar during World War II, the space program during the Cold War, and the recent breakthroughs in faster-than-light communication during the colonial wars. War forces us to think creatively, Marcus continued. When conventional solutions don't work, humans invent unconventional ones. He showed them the Manhattan Project, where human scientists had gone from theoretical physics to world-changing weapons in less than 3 years. Then he showed the Apollo program, where humans had gone from their first satellite to landing on their moon in just over a decade. The pattern is always the same, Marcus said. Humans face an impossible challenge, dedicate enormous resources to solving it, and achieve breakthroughs that seemed impossible just years before. The Nexari delegate, a being of living gas, who communicated through color changes, pulsed with curious yellow patterns. Through the translation device, its question came as a musical tone. Human Cain, what drives this innovation? Most species advance through careful research over long periods. Desperation, Marcus answered honestly. Humans innovate fastest when we have no other choice. When our survival depends on solving a problem, we find solutions that nobody thought possible. He showed them examples from the recent colonial wars. New weapons developed in months instead of years, tactics that violated established military doctrine but won battles, and strategies that turned defeats into victories through pure human stubbornness. But perhaps the most important thing to understand about humans, Marcus said, is that we learn from everyone. We don't just study our own military history. We study yours, too. The display changed to show human analysis of alien military capabilities. There were detailed breakdowns of Zephyrian battle formations, studies of Gornok cybernetic warfare, and tactical assessments of every species in the Confederation. We've been watching you fight for decades, Marcus explained. Every battle, every campaign, every tactical innovation has been studied and analyzed by human military experts. The alien delegates looked uncomfortable. They had assumed that humanity was too young and primitive to understand their military capabilities. For example, Marcus continued, we know that Zephyrian forces excel at direct assault, but struggle with prolonged defensive operations. Gornok units are nearly invincible in urban warfare, but vulnerable in open terrain. Valen economic pressure tactics work best against species dependent on interstellar trade. He looked directly at each delegation. As he spoke, making it clear that humans understood their strengths and weaknesses better than they had realized. We've also identified the weaknesses in Confederation military doctrine, Marcus added quietly. Your species have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. Your tactics haven't evolved because you haven't faced an enemy that forced you to evolve. The assembly hall fell silent again. The aliens were beginning to understand that humanity represented something they had never encountered before, a species that combined advanced technology with ancient warrior instincts and an unlimited capacity for adaptation. So when you ask about human capabilities, Marcus concluded, remember that we've been preparing for this meeting much longer than you realize. We know your strengths, we understand your weaknesses, and we've spent years developing strategies to deal with every species in this room. The next day, Marcus returned to the assembly hall with a new presentation prepared. The alien delegates were already seated, but their body language had changed. Where before they had looked bored and dismissive, now they seemed wary and attentive. Overlord Thexcar called the session to order. Dr. Kane, yesterday you gave us an overview of human military history. Today, we would like to discuss specific terms for humanity's integration into the galactic community. Of course, Overlord, Marcus replied. But first, I thought you might be interested in seeing how humans approach the study of warfare. It's quite different from what most species do. He activated his holographic display, and a detailed battle map appeared in the air above the central platform. It showed thousands of small figures arranged in complex formations across a landscape of hills and rivers. This is the Battle of Canny, fought over 2,000 years ago, Marcus began. A small Carthaginian army faced a much larger Roman force. By all logic, the Romans should have won easily. The display began to move, showing the armies advancing toward each other. The Carthaginian forces seemed to retreat in the center, while their wings moved forward. The Carthaginian general, Hannibal, used a tactic called double envelopment. He allowed the Romans to push into his center, while his wings closed around them like jaws. The animation showed the Roman army being completely surrounded. In a single day, they killed over 50,000 Roman soldiers while losing fewer than 6,000 of their own. Several aliens leaned forward in their seats. The tactical display was more detailed than anything they had expected from a primitive species. But here's what makes this battle important to humans, Marcus continued. We didn't just remember that Hannibal won. We studied exactly how he did it. We analyzed the terrain, the weather, the morale of the troops, the timing of each movement. Then we practiced the same tactics until we could execute them perfectly. A new battle appeared on the display, this one showing modern spacecraft in the darkness of space. This is the Battle of Proxima Station, fought just 5 years ago during the colonial wars. Human forces were outnumbered 3-1 by pirates using stolen alien technology. The space battle unfolded in 3 dimensions, with human ships using the same basic strategy that Hannibal had employed 2,000 years earlier. The enemy fleet pushed forward into what seemed like a retreating human formation, only to be surrounded and destroyed by ships that had been hiding in the asteroid field. Same tactic, different battlefield, Marcus said. That's how humans think about warfare. Every battle in our history is a lesson that can be applied to future conflicts. Delegate Vexleia of the Valen Republic, whose species controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes, spoke up. Dr. Kane, you seem to be suggesting that humans are naturally violent. Surely your species has evolved beyond such primitive impulses. Marcus smiled. Violence is just one tool among many, Delegate. Let me show you what I mean. The display changed to show a map of Earth during the 20th century, with 2 superpowers facing each other across multiple continents. This was called the Cold War, Marcus explained. For over 40 years, the 2 most powerful nations on Earth were locked in a struggle for dominance. They built enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet several times over. The aliens looked confused. Several of them had studied human history and knew that Earth had not been destroyed. But they never fired a single shot at each other, Marcus continued. Instead, they fought through economics, politics, technology, and proxy wars. They competed to see who could build better rockets, who could influence more smaller nations, who could develop superior technology. He showed images of the space race, with human rockets launching toward the moon and beyond. This competition drove more technological advancement in 50 years than most species achieve in 1,000. And it was all done without direct military conflict between the major powers. The Valen delegate was taking detailed notes now. Her species prided itself on economic warfare, but they had never seen it used so systematically. The lesson, Marcus said, is that humans don't just know how to fight wars. We know how to win without fighting, how to defeat enemies through superior strategy rather than superior weapons. Overlord Vexcar interrupted. These are interesting historical examples, Dr. Kane, but how does this relate to current galactic politics? I'm glad you asked, Overlord. Marcus advanced the display to show recent human conflicts. Let me show you how we've adapted these ancient principles to modern warfare. The first example was the siege of New Byzantium, where human colonists had been trapped on a hostile world by alien raiders. Instead of attempting a direct assault, the human fleet had used the planet's magnetic field to disable the raider ships, then offered the survivors jobs in the colonial defense force. We turned enemies into allies through superior strategy and economic incentives, Marcus explained. The raiders who had been attacking our colonies are now helping to defend them. The next example showed the Battle of the Crimson Nebula, where a small human task force had faced an entire pirate fleet. Instead of engaging directly, they had used the nebula's natural properties to create a chain reaction that destroyed most of the enemy ships, while leaving the human vessels undamaged. Environmental warfare, Marcus said. We use the battlefield itself as a weapon. The alien delegates were no longer just taking notes. They were asking detailed questions about tactics, logistics, and strategic planning. The Gornick military. Advisors wanted to know about human armor and weapons technology. The aquatic Delari were interested in underwater combat techniques. Marcus answered each question with detailed explanations and historical examples. He showed them how humans had developed combined arms tactics, where different types of forces worked together to multiply their effectiveness. He explained the concept of total war, where entire civilizations mobilized their resources for victory. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus said, let me show you how humans approach the problem of fighting superior enemies. The display showed the Vietnam War, with a technologically advanced superpower struggling against guerrilla fighters using primitive equipment. Superior technology doesn't guarantee victory, Marcus explained. The key is understanding your enemies' weaknesses and exploiting them. In this case, the guerrillas understood that they didn't need to win battles. They just needed to make the war too expensive for their enemies to continue. He showed similar examples from human history. The American Revolution, where colonists defeated the British Empire. The Afghan conflicts, where local fighters outlasted multiple superpowers. The resistance movements of World War II, where civilians became soldiers and entire populations became battlefields. The lesson, Marcus concluded, is that humans never give up. Even when we're outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched, we find ways to win. We learn from every defeat, adapt to every challenge, and keep fighting until we achieve our objectives. The assembly hall was completely silent. The alien delegates were processing the implications of what they had just learned. Humanity was not just a young species with advanced technology. They were a species that had spent thousands of years studying warfare as a science and perfecting it as an art. Finally, Overlord Thexkar spoke. Dr. Kane, are you suggesting that the Confederation should fear humanity? Not fear, Overlord. Marcus replied. Respect. There's a difference. He deactivated the holographic display and looked around the room at the assembled delegates. You invited us here because you were concerned about our rapid expansion. You wanted to establish limits on our growth and bring us under your control. Marcus paused, letting his words sink in. But now you understand what kind of species you're dealing with. We are not aggressive by nature, but we are incredibly good at warfare when it becomes necessary. We don't seek conflict, but we never lose when conflict finds us. He pulled out the data crystal containing the complete archive of human military history. This contains detailed records of every major human conflict for the past 3,000 years. Battle plans, casualty reports, tactical analyses, strategic studies, and lessons learned from each engagement. It represents the accumulated military knowledge of our entire species. Marcus held up the crystal so that all the delegates could see it. I'm prepared to share copies of this archive with any species that wishes to study it, not as a threat, but as an educational resource. Because the more you understand about human capabilities, the better equipped you'll be to work with us as partners rather than trying to control us as subjects. The silence stretched on for several long minutes. Finally, Delegate Vexlia spoke. Dr. King, would it be possible to arrange for Valen military advisors to study your economic warfare techniques? Similar requests began coming from other delegations. The Gornak wanted information about cybernetic warfare. The Dalari were interested in aquatic combat. Even the proud Zephyrians were asking about human tactical innovations. Marcus smiled. I think that can be arranged. The Endeavour dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b, and Marcus Kane got his first look at an alien world. The planet hung in space like a green and blue jewel, with massive floating cities connected by bridges of pure energy. Ships from 12 different species moved between the cities like schools of fish. Impressive, Captain Williams said, standing beside Marcus at the observation window. It's meant to be, Marcus replied. They want us to feel small. Lieutenant Amy Roberts, who would serve as Marcus's aide during the summit, joined them. She was a young woman with bright eyes and a quick mind. Doctor, we're receiving docking instructions from the Planetary Authority. They want us to land at the Grand Assembly in 30 minutes. Marcus nodded and returned to his quarters to collect his materials. The archive was stored on a single data crystal, no larger than his thumb, but it contained more information about warfare than most civilizations had ever seen. He slipped it into his jacket pocket and headed for the shuttle bay. The shuttle ride to the planet's surface was smooth. As they descended through the atmosphere, Marcus could see the Grand Assembly growing larger below them. It was a massive structure made of what looked like living crystal, stretching up into the clouds. Energy patterns flowed through its walls, like blood through veins. The aliens certainly know how to make an impression, Lieutenant Roberts said. That's the point, Marcus replied. Everything about this place is designed to make visitors feel inferior. They landed on a platform that jutted out from the side of the building. A group of aliens was waiting for them, and Marcus got his first close look at the species that ruled the galaxy. The leader was clearly a Zephyrian, one of the insectoid species that had built the most powerful military force in known space. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and crystalline armor that seemed to grow from its skin. Its eyes were multifaceted like a fly's, but far more intelligent. Greetings, humans, the Zephyrian said in perfect English. I am Overlord, Vexcar of the Zephyrian Empire. Welcome to Kepler 442b. Marcus stepped forward. Thank you for the invitation, Overlord. I am Dr. Marcus Kane, representing Earth and her colonies. A doctor? Dexcar's voice carried amusement. How interesting. We expected a military leader or a professional diplomat. I'm sure you did, Marcus said calmly. The group walked through corridors that seemed to pulse with their own light. Other aliens watched them pass. The gas-like Nexari that communicated through color changes, the reptilian Gornak with their cybernetic implants, and species that Marcus had only read about in intelligence reports. The main assembly hall was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows. Representatives from all 12 species sat in a circle around a central platform. Each delegation had their own section, designed to accommodate their unique biology. Overlord Dexcar gestured for Marcus to take his place at a small platform marked with Earth's symbol. Captain Williams and Lieutenant Roberts stood behind him, the only other humans in a room full of aliens. Now that our youngest member has arrived, Dexcar began, we can begin these proceedings. His tone made it clear that he considered humanity barely worth his time. The Overlord activated a holographic display that showed the same star map Marcus had seen on Earth, but with additional details. Human colonies were marked in red, and each was surrounded by data showing population, military strength, and industrial capacity. In less than 50 years, humanity has expanded from a single world to control over 200 star systems, Dexcar continued. This rapid growth has caused concern among the established members of the galactic community. Marcus listened, without expression, as the Overlord listed humanity's supposed crimes: aggressive expansion, military buildup, and disruption of established trade routes. It was clear that the aliens saw humans as dangerous children who needed to be controlled. The purpose of this summit, Dexcar concluded, is to establish proper guidelines for human expansion and to bring Earth into the galactic community under appropriate supervision. The other alien delegates nodded their agreement. Marcus could see that they had already decided among themselves what would happen to humanity. This was not a negotiation. It was a sentencing. When Nexcar finished, he turned to Marcus. Dr. Kane, would you care to respond on behalf of your species? Marcus stood slowly and walked to the center of the platform. The archive data crystal felt warm in his pocket. Thank you, Overlord Dexcar. I appreciate your concerns about humanity's rapid expansion. Several aliens shifted in their seats, clearly expecting him to be apologetic or defensive. You're absolutely right that we are a young species, Marcus continued. We have much to learn from the elder races of the galaxy. However, before we discuss any agreements, I think it would be helpful for the Confederation to understand exactly what kind of species you're dealing with. He activated his own holographic display, and the first image appeared. Ancient warriors fighting with bronze weapons on a dusty plain. This is the Battle of Kadesh, fought over 3,000 years ago between the Egyptian and Hittite empires. It was one of the first battles in human history to be fully documented, and it marked the beginning of our tradition of studying warfare. The aliens looked confused. They had expected discussions of trade agreements and territorial limits, not ancient history lessons. Marcus continued. What makes this battle significant is not who won or lost, but the fact that both sides kept detailed records of what happened. They analyzed their tactics, studied their mistakes, and used what they learned to improve their armies. The next image showed Roman legions marching in perfect formation. The Roman Empire lasted for over 1,000 years because they turned warfare into a science. Every battle was studied, every tactic was recorded, and every lesson was passed down to the next generation. Overlord Dexcar interrupted. Dr. Kane, while your history is no doubt fascinating, we are here to discuss current political matters. I understand, Overlord. But to understand humanity's current capabilities, you need to understand how we develop them. Marcus touched a control, and the display jumped forward to show medieval knights charging across a battlefield. This is the Battle of Hastings, which changed the course of human civilization. The Norman victory was not due to superior numbers or better weapons, but to tactical innovation and adaptive strategy. The images continued, Greek fire being used to destroy enemy ships, siege engines battering down castle walls, cannons breaking. The power of armored knights. Each image was accompanied by detailed analysis of tactics, casualties, and technological innovations. Marcus could see that some of the aliens were beginning to pay attention. The Gornek delegation was taking notes, and several of the Nexari had changed to colors that indicated deep interest. The point, Marcus said, is that humans don't just fight wars. We study them. We analyze every decision, examine every outcome, and systematically improve our methods. He advanced the display to show more recent conflicts, the trenches of World War I, the tank battles of World War II, the jungle fighting in Vietnam. The casualty figures made several aliens gasp. In just the 20th century of Earth's calendar, humans fought 2 global wars involving over 100 million casualties. Most species would have been devastated by such losses. Instead, we learned. The final image showed the recent colonial wars, human fleets engaging alien pirates, ground forces fighting in the harsh environments of frontier worlds, and the rapid development of new weapons and tactics. In the past 50 years, humanity has fought over 300 separate conflicts across our expanding territory. Each war has taught us something new about combat in space, on different worlds, and against different types of enemies. Marcus paused and looked around the room. The dismissive attitude of the alien delegates had changed. They were no longer looking at him as a primitive human who needed guidance. They were looking at him as a representative of a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. So when you ask about humanity's rapid expansion, Marcus concluded, remember that we didn't get where we are by accident. We got here by learning from every fight, adapting to every challenge, and never making the same mistake twice. The assembly hall fell silent. Overlord Thexkar's crystalline armor reflected the light from the holographic display as he processed what he had just heard. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Kane, are you threatening the Confederation? Marcus smiled. Not at all, Overlord. I'm educating you. Dr. Marcus Kane sat in his small office aboard the research ship Terra Nova, reading through old battle reports when the call came in. The ship's communication system crackled to life, and Captain Lisa Martinez's voice filled the room. Dr. Kane, please report to the bridge immediately. We have an urgent message from Earth. Marcus closed his tablet and walked through the narrow corridors of the ship. The Terra Nova was not a warship, but a research vessel designed for long journeys between star systems. He had been studying ancient battlefields on distant planets for the past 6 months. The work was quiet and peaceful, exactly what he needed after years of teaching military history at the Global Defense Academy. When he reached the bridge, Captain Martinez was waiting for him. She was a tall woman with short black hair and serious eyes. Behind her, the main screen showed the blue and white marble of Earth, still 3 days away at their current speed. What's this about, Captain? Marcus asked. We just received a priority message from Admiral Peterson at the Diplomatic Corps. You're being recalled to Earth immediately. She handed him a datapad. But that's not the strange part. Look at this. Marcus read the message on the screen. His eyes grew wide as he processed the information. The Galactic Confederation, a group of 12 alien species that controlled most of the known galaxy, had sent an official invitation to humanity. They wanted to hold a peace summit on a neutral world called Kepler 442b. A peace summit? Marcus looked up at the captain. What do they think we're at war with them? That's what makes this interesting, Captain Martinez said. She touched a button, and the screen changed to show a star map. Look at human expansion over the last 20 years. The map showed dozens of red dots spreading out from Earth like drops of blood in water. Each dot was a human colony, mining, station, or trading post. The expansion looked aggressive, like humanity was claiming territory as fast as they could find it. We've been busy, Marcus admitted. Too busy, according to the aliens. Intelligence reports suggest they're worried about our rapid growth. They want to establish what they call mutual understanding and peaceful coexistence protocols. The captain's voice carried a hint of sarcasm. Marcus studied the message again. Why are they asking for me? I'm not a diplomat. I teach military history. That's the million-credit question. Admiral Peterson wants to brief you personally when we reach Earth. Captain Martinez looked at him carefully. But between you and me, I think they chose you for a specific reason. What reason? Think about it. The aliens expect us to send a traditional diplomat, someone who will smile and agree to whatever terms they set. Someone who will be impressed by their technology and their long history in space. She paused. Instead, Earth is sending a man who knows more about warfare than anyone in the fleet. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. You think this is about more than just diplomacy? I think the aliens are about to get an education they weren't expecting. The next 3 days passed quickly. Marcus spent his time reviewing files and preparing for whatever Admiral Peterson had planned. When the Terra Nova docked at Luna Station, a shuttle was already waiting to take him to Earth. Admiral Peterson was a gray-haired man with tired eyes who had spent 40 years in the diplomatic service. His office overlooked the Global Defense Academy, where Marcus had taught for the past decade. The two men had known each other for years. Marcus, thank you for coming so quickly. The Admiral gestured to a chair across from his desk. I suppose you're wondering why we chose you for this mission. The thought had crossed my mind. Peterson activated a holographic display that showed the same star map Marcus had seen on the Terra Nova. Our intelligence sources in the Confederation have been very helpful. The aliens see us as a young, impulsive species that has grown too quickly. They believe we need guidance from our elders in the galaxy, and they expect us to be grateful for their wisdom. Exactly. They're planning to dictate terms to us, to put limits on our expansion and bring us under their control. Peterson's voice hardened. What they don't understand is that humanity didn't get where we are by backing down from a fight. Marcus looked at the star map again. Each red dot represented millions of humans who had left Earth to build new lives among the Hmong. Stars, what do you want me to do? I want you to teach them about us. Really teach them. Peterson touched a control, and the display changed to show a massive digital archive. We've prepared something special for you to take to the summit. The archive contained thousands of files. Battle reports, strategic analyses, casualty figures, and tactical studies from every major human conflict in recorded history. From ancient battles fought with swords and shields to the recent colonial wars fought with plasma weapons and faster-than-light ships. This is every war we've ever fought, Marcus said in amazement. Every battle, every siege, every campaign, complete with analysis of what worked, what didn't, and what we learned from each experience. Peterson's smile was cold. The aliens want to understand what kind of species they're dealing with. I think it's time we showed them. Marcus spent the next week studying the archive. The amount of information was staggering. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and they had documented every detail. Not just the victories, but the defeats. Not just the strategies, but the mistakes. Each conflict had taught them something new about warfare. What impressed Marcus most was how quickly humans learned and adapted. Military doctrine that had remained unchanged for centuries could be revolutionized in a single campaign. Weapons and tactics that seemed impossible one year became standard practice the next. On the day of departure, Marcus stood on the bridge of the diplomatic ship Endeavor, watching Earth shrink behind them. In his quarters were copies of the complete archive, along with his own analysis of human military development. Captain Jake Williams, who would serve as his military escort, joined him at the observation window. Nervous about meeting the aliens, Doctor, Marcus thought about the archive in his quarters. Thousands of years of human warfare, all carefully documented and analyzed. Not nervous, Captain. I'm actually looking forward to it. Why is that? Marcus watched the stars grow brighter as they jumped to hyperspace. Because they invited us to a peace summit, but I don't think they understand what peace means to humans. What does it mean? Peace is just the time between wars when we prepare for the next one. Marcus turned away from the window. And we've gotten very good at preparing. The Endeavor continued its journey toward Kepler 442b, carrying Dr. Marcus Kane and his archive toward a meeting that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The aliens had invited humanity to learn about peace, but they were about to receive an education in war instead.